Here it is, my mad science experiment. To find out if there's a real practical difference in power between rigid and flexible weapons. Some people say the flexible connection is weak and doesn't transfer as much kinetic energy to the target as a rigid structure. Others say the flexible one is actually more powerful. I've seen some tests, but they always have one of two problems. One, the rigid and flexible weapon are not identical in size and weight. Two, they're swung by hand, and unless you're a robot, you're not going to be perfectly consistent with each swing. That's why I made these and came up with the mad science experiment. And yes, this applies to nunchucks versus sticks too. The first attempt didn't go the way I wanted.
Oh my god.
No.
Just stay there, you piece of...
What made me think this was a good idea? I'll make that available as bonus content to patrons, including all the swearing.
What the is going on here? For sake. Shit.
Well, some of the swearing, there was a lot. And also, the support very much helps because the materials and tools I needed for this were more expensive than I thought. This is the contraption I came up with. Let me show you its features. It is rubber powered after all, sort of slingshot adjacent. So I've got a pulley here with rubber bands that run down to hook up to the end of this handle here, which pivots around the copper pipe. The point of this elastic band is to serve just as a marker, so I pull it back to the same position each time. Then we have this bottle here. Hose goes in here to collect it, and then I have a scale there. Normally, if you wanted to squeeze water out of that, you would push for a longer time as opposed to just a very brief contact. So because it's only going to be a little bit at a time, I'm going to do this 10 times for each and then measure how much water has been displaced. It's not exactly high precision measurement, but for direct comparison, all things being equal, it should do, and I just am not willing to spend several grand on an impact sensor setup, so it'll have to do. The weight of the mace handle is 330 grams. The weight of the flail handle, make sure it doesn't rest on anything, is 330. Depending on how it's resting, even exactly 330 and a half. So I couldn't have done this any better. Here we go. 1. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. It was a bit messier than I'd like, with things shifting around a little bit, but shouldn't be too bad. So here's what we've got. 37.5 grams, 1.32 fluid ounces. So now I'm going to top up the bottle, replace the flail with the mace, and do it all over again. All right, this should be the easier part. So, 1. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Let's see what we have here. 35 grams, 1.25 fluid ounces. I noticed that during the test, the measuring cup shifted a little bit. I don't think it spilled anything, but maybe it did. It did. That might account for the 2 milliliters in difference. I tried to recreate the spill to measure it, and I'm confident in saying it was most likely less than 4 milliliters. Either way, that would still make the two virtually identical. I was expecting both to produce the same amount of kinetic energy. The question was simply if the flexible connection interferes with the kinetic chain, or if the same impact device delivers energy more effectively unchained. So far it doesn't seem like it, but let's continue. Well, I tried to redo the mace the same way, but there was a problem. Alright, I'm gonna have to concede defeat on this. I cannot stop the bottle from leaking massively and deforming and all of that. It's okay though, I had other tests planned anyway. All right, let's try a different setup. This is nice and simple, straightforward. In this case, they're both gonna hit a bit harder because it's a steeper angle. But otherwise, setup is the same. Not as much as I thought. Okay, so it takes 4 swings of the mace to break this. If I had stronger bands, of course, it would be quicker. Okay, fresh board, positioned the same way as the other one. Let's go. What? Not what I wanted, but that's actually not bad. 2. Oh boy. That hit way harder. That broke it all the way through already on the second swing. Look at that. It's all separated. So this is where it wants to rest naturally, past the point of impact. And that kind of follow-through is important for a good martially viable hit. Okay, let's try that again. All right, first swing. Okay, second. That is broken. I mean, just slightly holding on, but it's basically the same as the first one. The mere 2 hits it took previously with the flail to snap the board seems like an outlier, because in this case, it's 4 hits for both the flail and the mace for a very similar result. Together with a water test, it would seem like the mace and flail are equal. But wait, we're not done. It gets weirder. I also got some proper hardwood. Let's see how that goes. Yeah, it's almost fully broken. 2. Somehow it's still holding together. All right, 3. 4. There it is. Let's see how the mace does it. 1. 2. 3. 5. If it's the same as the flail, it should break now. 6. 'It's not broken all the way. It's 7 now. Man, why is this not breaking? I mean, it is broken, but not all the way. 8. So what do we make of all this? Well, first you have to keep in mind that this doesn't say anything about how good of a weapon each is in terms of the other pros and cons. I consider the first test more accurate because water displacement is a much more quantifiable standard than how many hits it takes to break a board. And in that regard, they seem to be equal, which is what I was expecting. The tests on the boards, on the other hand, were a little surprising. Why did the flail perform better across the board than the mace? I mean, there can just be some inaccuracies, of course, because, again, wood being a natural material, not every piece is going to be exactly the same. And then there's also some variability in hit placement. Now, I did set the length, the distance to a certain standard, so that should be about the same. But the way it was attached to the tube, it could shift just a little bit. So the impact point side to side could be a little bit different. And that could just by chance skew things. There was a round where it took both the same number of swings to break the board. But then others, I mean, the most extreme case was the flail breaking a board in just 2 swings. That was kind of wild. Now there is a difference in the starting position. The rigid mace gets pulled back to fully vertical, like that. I didn't want to do that with the flail because that might mess with it. So I did pull this a little further back. Now, if in both cases the head hit at the same time, then this would generate more velocity. If it's a longer distance, but it takes the same time, then obviously the velocity has to be higher. But that wasn't the case. In the slow-mo, when I sync the start of both, we can see that the flail handle actually moves faster, which makes sense because the position of the chain effectively pulls the balance back, but then the impact end lands later. So I don't think the slightly different starting position of the striking end makes a difference, but the flail clearly rotates differently. So as far as the bottom line conclusion goes, I'm comfortable in saying that the flexible version was not any less powerful than the rigid one. I'm not as comfortable in saying that rigid and flexible are equal. I think they should be, but because the flail performed a little better on the boards, not on the water pressure test, I can't be as sure of that. It's possible that the flexible one does a little better. Again, I don't see why. I'm not a physicist. If any of you are, give us your hypothesis in the comments. But either way, this is a bad day for the flexi-haters. Be it flails or nunchucks or anything like that. Not whips, that's a different story. I really hope this gets more views than the previous video. You can do something about that, by the way, just by engaging with it. Commenting and liking or disliking too. Any kind of engagement is good in pleasing the capricious algorithm overlord. Anyway, thanks for watching. Take care, folks.